Welcome to the Waiting List podcast. Tell us a story.
It's like many things you start building from scratch.
And then I'm like, wait, I really do like watches because
You've seen so many watches that makes you excited.
I think I really do like watches.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to see if you are a watch enthusiast. Right, welcome to another episode of the Waiting List podcast. And today I'm joined with the drop-dead gorgeous Long Long and the dreamy Jacqueline. Would you agree, James? Is that a good?
Of course.
Yeah, totally right. Today we are joined by another watch collector, a good friend of mine, and an important person within the gang who doesn't necessarily get the exposure. It's James. Welcome, James.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, James.
Hi.
Right. So now before we start, like I said, like in my last podcast, I never know how these interviews go, right? And you guys know this. And the actual interview is recorded most of the time. I spend like minimum of 2 hours understanding the person before we interview and then try and find an angle in which to approach the interview. And for people listening, we like to address the personal story of the collector as well as talk about watches. But the reason why I'm saying this is that after my call with James, just like Eric, who we had before, I came out with a huge respect for you after you went through. Basically, we spent quite a lot of time going through your life story, but it's in a very different way to Eric, right? And I actually felt extremely humbled by it. And we usually associate that here on this podcast with individuals that have achieved immense success, but your story isn't quite like that. And the reason why I really hope I do your story justice and I can really eke it out. So I'm not going to say any more than that. So I think we'll just get into it. So James, could you give us some background about you for the audience and where you come from and where you grew up, where you spent where you got educated and what you do in Shanghai now?
Oh, okay. So I'm from Taipei, Taiwan, and I went to the US of A when I was 17. I went to high school there and also college and grad school there. And then working in Wall Street for 3 years, and then moved to Shanghai, joined a hedge fund, and worked a little bit, and went back to Taiwan for 2.5 years, and then came back again in 2013. My last job was a investment bank. However, because the COVID situation, we were doing the cross-border transaction. Because the COVID situation, we could not do anything with it. So I quit that job last August, and that's where I am.
Mm.
Okay, so that's quite a lot of things that you went through. Let's just take it back and start off with when you were in the US. So you went there into high school, and then you subsequently went to college, or what we say university there. And then, you managed to get onto Wall Street, which, probably potentially is something that a lot of people aspire to do. It's got that really kind of prestige to it. How did you feel at that time? Did you feel like, this is where I kickstart my life? My life is going well. Is that how you felt? How did you feel?
Sure, of course. I was working for Goldman Sachs. That's one of the dream firms that all the graduate students they wanted to go. So that's where I ended up at.
So for people that, like you say, Goldman Sachs, biggest firm, was it cracked out to be what it was? Like, what is Goldman Sachs really like to work for?
My job was not that stressful. I was doing the risk management for the fund of fund, meaning that we invest in hedge funds for clients. So that one was not bad. I was not in the investment bank, have to work for 100 hours a week. I didn't have to do that. So it was okay. But after a while, it got kind of not very challenging either for my position. So.
And not long after, I think I remember you moved to Princeton, is that right? Something changed and you moved to Princeton.
No, my very first job was in Princeton.
Okay. And then you had an opportunity
that
to move to Shanghai. Is that right?
yes. After 3 years in that particular group, yeah, I joined a hedge fund in Shanghai
So
in
at that time
2007.
in your life, you must have thought, great, I'm going back to Asia. You know, I found a way to get back. I got this new venture. I get go to this new amazing city. Is that how you felt? Did you feel again really excited?
Yeah, pretty excited. But I also didn't know what to expect, because I'd never been to Shanghai before. I knew it was pretty different from Taiwan. So I came here with an open mind.
Hmm. And then afterwards, unfortunately, this was around this, well, 2007, 2008 time where, the GFC hit, which is global financial crisis hit. And
Yep.
unfortunately, after that, you kind of lost your job, right? After a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, being in limbo, you couldn't actually then find another job, right? So what was going through your mind back then? Like after, well, not having a job and originally doing quite well.
Yep. Well, it sucked. I don't want to sugarcoat it, and I was a little bit depressed. Because I did not know how to cope with this. But also back then, a lot of people were out of job too, so I was not the worst, but not not being able to work for a couple months is kind of put some mental pressure onto myself. So yeah, that's what's going on through my mind back then.
Long Long, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I have a question. So also being half Taiwanese, I'm curious, what was your thought about Shanghai when you first landed there? Because for me, when I first went to Shanghai, coming from Taipei, I was thinking, man, like all the stuff they say about China being backwards, this is like 10 times more advanced than Taipei. So what were you thinking?
Well, the buildings are pretty advanced, right? But but I did have to say that on average, people were not as polite as Taiwanese, and they still spit on the streets. You see quite often people even peeing on the streets. That's a daily sight. So in that regard, I still think Taiwan is a little bit more advanced. Just
Okay.
people.
Okay.
So during that time where you were depressed, right? How did you get out of that hole? Because it's not, it's not easy. And I think people listening on podcasts and been following our episodes generally hear a lot of positive side. And I think this is the first time we're addressing something like this. How did you get out of that? And how long did it take?
Couple months. I think 4 or 5 months. I kind of forgot, but at first I just played a lot of video games on my phone, which after a while it got boring, and just have to get another job and just trying to stand up again with my 2 feet, and that's how I get out of it.
So it
I
sounds
cannot
like
just stay at home all the time. That's not good.
so
Were you, I'm sorry, I'm just wondering, were you alone in Shanghai when this was happening, or did you have family or?
Well, I have my cousins and my cousin's husband here, but we're not super close. We see each other maybe like once per 2 months, probably. Yeah, and I was pretty much alone. My parents, they're still in the U.S. and my sister was in the U.S. So I was kind of alone in Shanghai.
So like at the beginning there was a bit of escapism and you're trying to focus on and you play games, and I guess sometimes maybe due to financial reasons reality sets in and you realize you have to stand on your 2 feet and you have to get a job. I know in the following job you took a 40% pay cut, and again it lasted a year. So, and that was curtailed by the fact you actually had to go to Taiwan to take care of your grandma full time, and that it was right.
No, that's even after another job. So
Okay, so you even had another job in between.
Right. So a lot of changes.
Yeah.
A lot of changes. But I think
Can we
the
put
main
this
thing.
into can we put this into a perspective? Like, how old were you at this point? So when you were playing your video games and feeling very depressed, how old were you?
28, 27,
Yeah.
28.
28.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember this
Okay.
during the thing because what I was getting to was like his grandma was 2.5 years, right? For most of us, we were getting into our prime of our career.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for you to be 2.5 years not working in this, was that super frustrating? And having taken that initial hit of being made redundant, and then having to take care of your grandma, which I think is very, very admirable, by the way. You just keep getting hit. Like you try to stand back up and you get hit back down again, stand back up and get hit back. I mean, there's a few jobs in between where you got the same experience. How did you just get through that, man?
I think I'm a pretty how to say that? I'm sorry.
Pessimistic.
Like pessimistic. Yeah.
Yeah, pessimistic. Yes, and but to the point is that you have to be optimistic. I have to bring myself back from that extreme, right? And trying to see the world. Eventually everybody dies, so I only have one life here. I just need to make the most out of it. So that's my change mentally, because a lot of stuff that didn't going my way would put me down. And eventually I just couldn't think like that anymore. Otherwise my life would be over before I know it.
Gak?
I have a question. So obviously, like, I'm at a point in age where a lot of my peers from school, and I think we touched on this a little bit before, but their dream is to get into Wall Street and to be an IB, so like GS, MS, whatever. And so obviously you worked in Wall Street pretty much right after school, and you were there for 3 years. And even though you mentioned that like your job wasn't the most stressful out of everyone, but I'm sure the atmosphere was still very competitive and taxing. So going from that and then onto a period of constant change and uncertainty, was there anything that you took during the few months or the few years that you were switching between jobs? Did you ever look back onto your life back in Wall Street? And if you did, like, what did you think of it? Was it like, oh, I wish I was still there, or I'm pretty glad that I'm back in Asia and trying to figure my way out? Or is it something like, did you take any lessons away from your time in Wall Street?
I think the situation started kind of going downhill after like a year and a half. And my biggest takeaway is, if something's wrong, and you just have to react fairly fast. Otherwise, you couldn't. The things will get worse before you know it. So that's my biggest takeaway is, if you recognize something, the situation is not going your way, do something about it and do it fast. You just have to react fast. I think back then my mistake was I stayed there for too long. The situation there was not good. Yeah, so that's my mistake.
When you describe your period, even in the private phone call we had, there's probably a lot actually that a lot of listeners and that don't know about me, and it really reminded me of the darkest periods of my life, you know, because it's not actually that too dissimilar. I think maybe the podcast, and to some extent like Instagram, people think that, you know, I have this perfect life and, you know, I'm high flying and stuff like that. But, you know, I came from a great job doing dentistry, and that was in the UK. And I suddenly went to China and I did something totally different, which wasn't watches, which was like opening 2 restaurants, which is what my family does. And went into a totally new environment, and it went really quickly downhill, right? But I wasn't in a position to cut it off straight away because it just wasn't my own project. And I remember certain things you say. One, I just come to Shanghai, and I didn't know anybody, and I was super lonely, like super lonely, and you couldn't talk to your family because you didn't want your family to worry about you, like because you know, they were going through some tough times as well, and it was so painful, you know, like even now, part of what motivates me is because that pain will never leave me. And if I hadn't, like, when you were talking about it, I did want to ask you, but I will maybe ask you later. But you know, if I hadn't come out of that, I think I would have been damaged mentally. Like, it got to the point where you know, I couldn't sleep at night. It was that point where you felt like crying but you couldn't cry. And every day, yeah, I remember that escapism, like just sitting on the sofa in the day and just going on like the internet, you know, looking at shit, and then just trying to get through the day. Actually getting through the day was a nightmare. Actually, even waking up was a nightmare. So like waking up to a point where you had to face the day, it was a really difficult thing for me. And you know, I'm not ashamed to say, like, you know, I felt like taking my own life. You know, I reached those points. I reached those darkest points. So when people go through that, and a lot of people say, oh, you know, you're not mentally strong or something like that. Yeah, it's very easy to say. But when things cascade quickly from, especially when you were high, flying high, and you think you had everything, and then you come back down to literally rock bottom, it isn't so easy. Like, it was so hard for me to stand back up. And this is why I have a great affection and greater passion for, and maybe a blindness to, watches. Because watches was a vehicle to get me to stand up again. And I don't know, obviously, again, family, but I got to say, you know, when you look back, you kind of feel like I got myself back up, because you get so limited. I didn't think you know, obviously family does play a part and friends do play a part, but it's really kind of down to yourself. And now, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, you're so, you know, you're mentally strong, all this kind of stuff. It's because, you know, we're in the process of going so low. I found myself. I found what I really was. It's like you strip away everything, right? Yeah, and then you literally start with the basic blocks of yourself, and you have to build yourself back up. You start realizing stuff you really need, stuff that's important in life, and stuff that you thought was important in life and actually is fucking bullshit, right? So I think it's important to know through your story and you know, what I've just shared is that life, I didn't plan that. I wanted everything to go smoothly. And then life is so unpredictable that it just plays a card and your whole world can just suddenly flip like that. And Yeah, basically.
I understand.
Yeah, you
I
understand,
can
right?
totally relate.
People that have been through it, unfortunately, like you can see it in their eyes. And those that haven't
Yeah.
experienced it, you can also see it in their eyes because there's a blissful ignorance in their eyes. Because the pain, no, it's true. The pain, you know what I mean? Like, because you've been through it.
Yeah.
The pain you have is a scar. It doesn't heal. Like, you just, it's not like you forget about it, but it's like a tattoo or something, a mark, yeah, which you always see and think, oh, okay, I remember that time. It's part of me. You accept it and you do move on. And I think it's important that listeners know that, yeah, you can have that period in your life that happens like that. I can't say that everybody will get through it. I don't believe that everybody does. I believe some people do sink and they get swallowed up, and that's their life done. But if you do get through it, then you have to reinvent yourself, because what you were doing before just wasn't enough at that time to get you through. You have to find another way.
Yep.
So, but one thing, was also the self-doubt. Oh, the self-doubt just killed me. Absolutely killed me. Even today, it kills me. And a lot of people, again, don't see that. They see this guy, come out and being quite positive, charismatic, confident, all that kind of stuff. But the self-doubt every single day where you thought, I got to take this back a little bit. Before, obviously, to get into dentistry, you need the top grade. So anybody who's in England, GCSE level, I got 15 GCSEs, right? Average person is like 7 to 9, right? I had 15, yeah, all pretty much A's. Then I went to the A levels, pretty much aced and got A's, got into the course, everything perfect. You've always thought like, yeah, I got this. But man, that first huge setback at that kind of level, and yeah, we had little setbacks along the way, but that big, the self-doubt, the self-criticism, like, what the hell, like in your head, it's just like, what are you doing with your life? Are you as good as you even thought you were? Because it doesn't look like it. Every day was just absolutely biting at me. And like I said, even today, I have certain times where, the demons come out again. I'm in the room and I can go in some really dark places, and yeah, but it doesn't last as long, I'd say. So does that resonate with you? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I can, especially the self-doubt part. Yeah, I still struggle with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think going back to what James said about being generally a very pessimistic person, I think a lot of people listening will think about, okay, I'm at this place now. I'm very pessimistic. There's a lot of self-doubt, like you said. How did you make that switch though into being positive? Like, what are literally the steps that you have to take? Because if I'm listening to this now and I'm just playing video game after video game, I'm like, what do I do? Like,
No, but just in your mind, mentally, you just think that, okay, if nothing on this earth has a point, then I just don't need to fear anymore, because okay, just take it day by day and just live your life and just be slow with it. You don't have to be the next greatest thing. You just accept being normal, and I think you can get through a lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I can add to that, right? I don't think, that you can approach it so much as step by step, this is what you should do to get out of it, right? I actually think that might be an unhealthy approach to it, because you've then put pressure on yourself to feel like, oh shit, I need to do this to get out. Like, I think what I realized is, as much as that difficult time came uncontrollably, you are in life. There's a lot of stuff that's not in your control, and you shouldn't hold yourself accountable to that, right? Because it wasn't in your control in the first place. And therefore, I couldn't control that watchers came to me in this kind of way that managed to kind of pull me out a little bit. and then helped me, and then I could actually it gave me a foothold, I would say, and then there's something for me to work on and focus on and keep going up.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say like, you know, when that happened, or because I'm pretty sure, because I remember basically one day in the restaurant, right, I was sitting there and, you know, just moping about, basically just trying to be useful, but not, well, physically there, not really there mentally. And this foreigner came in, and he went and he ordered takeaway, and then I was like sitting there, and he was waiting for it. So I struck up a conversation with him, and it turned out that he was the watchmaker for JLC, right? And he had just moved to Shanghai. So we were talking and talking and talking, and then maybe that was something that got my attention onto watches again. But yeah, I wish I could tell you. I wish I could help everybody listening. Like, this is what you need to do. But just like I said in my previous thing, I just don't think some people can get out of it. Will ever get out of it, right? I just couldn't pinpoint to certain things. Likewise, I think if you also don't have, let's say, a strong family structure around you, or a strong friendship circle around you, it's probably even harder, right? And not everybody will have that. So I definitely feel like talking to people helps, because a lot of, you have to think through these things, right? You have to philosophize. Some of it's actually very spiritual, because when I said about not having control in your life and something like a watchmaker turning up, you think, oh, maybe you're so desperate that you're thinking, is this done by God? So you start thinking like that, right?
Oh.
And did this person come into my life, you know, because of God? Because it's so fateful. Like, it's not like I did anything. It just happened, right? So yeah.
I have something completely, a little bit off topic, right? But I've always thought this. I think people who excel in school. So I even thought, like, I would categorize myself this way. Like, you excel in school, middle school, high school, university. And then you were very clear on what you wanted to do. So like James, I was like, I'm going to go into corporate banking. I got into my dream job, all that, right? I think the education, people who excel in the education system are people who are very good at being very disciplined and saying, I have to get this done, and you do it. So you're very good at this. And then suddenly you get thrown into the world, and then you're like, I'm at this job. I did all the right things. Why is it not working out? And then you're like, okay, I need to leave this job. But the moment you leave this job, there's no structure in your life anymore. There's no one telling you got to be in class by 8. There's no one telling you what to do next, and you have zero direction. So I've always thought the education system was built in a way that just actually screws you over. Like, no one teaches you how to manage your life or how to make decisions. You just know how to do the next thing, which is get to this class, finish the syllabus, and excel at this. That's all you know.
I would, before Jacqueline jumps in here, I would actually, pretty much agree with all of that. So it changes your perspective. Before Jacqueline comes in, if you want to follow what you've been, and I will say the word brainwashed into thinking, this is how society works. This is basically, you know, what the path you should lead to happiness. This will bring you happiness if you follow this protocol. That's like the biggest BS ever. Like, you're getting sold a dream that isn't true, right? And it makes you a great citizen for the country, a great tax-paying citizen, right, in the system. But it doesn't lead to happiness. And why, when I stripped away everything, I realized money couldn't save me. You know, by the way, it's not like I didn't have money. Yeah, I had money. Yeah, like I still could do way more stuff than the average person. It's not nothing to do with money, right? How I felt at that time, how that low, I can tell everybody listening, it's got nothing to do with money. right?
Mm.
So if you think like, I need to get more money and play this stupid comparison game with your next peer because this person is like same age as me and he's hitting these numbers or whatever, yeah. Well, in America, it's keeping up with the Joneses. That's not a way to happiness, right?
Mm.
So, but yeah, in essence, yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Long Long. It doesn't, education system doesn't teach you how to be a person, how to cope
Mm.
with real life. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't at all. Yeah. And I think
Yeah, I also agree. Yeah.
the emphasis of like you got to think as well, you growing up as a person, you have your education, which is given by the school, but also you have your personal growth, which is
Mhm.
maybe given by your parents. But there isn't a clear definition,
Mhm.
right, on like, let's say, morals.
Mhm.
Yeah, who teaches you that? Because
Mhm.
now I feel like the school is getting dished out with everything. Now it's all on the school. Hang on, man. Parents need to stand up and take responsibility here. You had the kid, you brought the kid in. It's your responsibility to take care of the kid from a personal level. Because I think the way I see it is, professionally, career wise, we all want to develop, right? As that's successful. But also on a personal level is why Long Long and I and Jacqueline, we read books. We try and develop on a personal level. That personal journey is basically foregone in school, and if you don't have that parental upbringing. I come from a very healthy family, by the way, right? My parents are together, they gave me the love. I got all of that. So maybe that core foundation was also helped me get through. At the same time, my parents were very, when it came to like academia, really pushy as well. Not pushy, but typical, really wanted you to do really well kind of thing. Put clear frameworks in that supported you to get those grades. There was no reason to fail in that. So yeah. So sorry, Jacqueline, come in.
No, you actually touched on something I wanted to briefly say as well. But I'll go back to what Long was saying, and I absolutely agree. Even though I have not yet had enough like uh, in real world experiences as the three of you
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
had, but just over the past two 2.5 years, I realized how much of a bubble the school system creates for their students. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone, but I know it was certainly the case for myself. Um,
Mhm.
and I first realized this in my junior year spring break when it's spring break and everyone's so happy, and then I was flying to LA to go to Coachella, and sitting on the plane next to me was this girl from Northeastern University. Um, and we just struck up a conversation, and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing in California?" And then she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and work in SSV and for my co-op." And I was like, "Oh, what co-op? Northeastern has a co-op system?" And she's like, "Yeah, every student has to do a co-op program before they graduate. So you can choose like which year you want to do this, but ideally towards the end of schooling." So she was in her senior year, and she was going to work 6 months in this startup in Silicon Valley and then go back to Boston to graduate. And I had heard about this co-op system before, but I've never really met or talked in extensive lengths with someone who was doing this program. And I just said to her, I'm like, I wish that my school had that, because here I am flying to, like, on the same plane as you are, flying to a freaking music festival to enjoy life and still be in this bubble, like everything is gonna be fine and you're a student, you're supposed to enjoy youth while you're taking the same flight as I am, but going to work for 6 months. And even though I've done internships before, but I've never worked for 6 months. And I was so jealous of that, and I told her, and we kept on contact, and actually met up once she came back to Boston to graduate. And I said the same thing to my friends. And I realized for myself how big of a bubble it was, school, at least for me and for my friends, because you do internships, but you're never really in the real world unless after you graduate. And when you do graduate, say COVID hits you, right? So recently, um, people fresh out of college who are looking for jobs and all of a sudden COVID hits you, you lose direction completely. And I can speak from, many people around me. This is kind of like the consensus that we've talked about. So absolutely, Long, I agree with you. It's you lose direction. And going back to what Dan was saying, I think this is when the structural relationships in your life come in. So your family, your friends, your mentors, those people who really can help you to lift a hand when you're in need. And when you don't have that, let's say your upbringing wasn't in an extremely supportive family, or you don't really have that system around, or you're someone who's a little bit more introverted and don't like sharing that side of you and only like sharing the sunny side up to those people around you, then maybe you do have a harder time to get out of that realm. But I guess the point I want to touch on is the education system. We are all, I mean, for people with Asian backgrounds mostly, you're raised in a background where your job is to study, right? Like when you're a
Yeah.
student, it's not like, oh yeah, you should get good grades. It's not like a should anymore. It's like you get good grades because what are you doing with your life right now? You're a student, you're supposed to study. This is your job. But once you make the transition from, I mean, I certainly remember when I was making the transition between high school and college, while coming from a very disciplined background, I felt a little lost and imbalanced when I first went to college, because instead of waking up at 7:30 and being in school for your first lesson of the day at 9, you might not even have a class until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And it's really up to you to decide if you even want to attend that class, right? It's a lecture. I mean, if it's a lecture, right, nobody's going to know. But if it's a seminar, obviously go. But people skip lectures because they can broadcast it online and they don't even need to leave their dorm room. So you are literally, your life is in your hands. And then you move on from college to work where you're no longer in a bubble, because college, everyone treats you like their baby. That's when it's really hard. So I think the one thing to get to is, appreciate the support system that you have around you, and be radically open-minded to what you want to do and other people's opinions, but at the same time, like, respect your own process and respect your own time, rather than comparing with everyone around you, because we all develop differently. And I think it's just not the most healthy way if you're just constantly comparing every single step of your life to others around you. Yeah, but thank you for sharing that, James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
I was always thinking, if I ever become a mom one day, that's one thing, right? Like, to teach my kid. But I think the other thing they never teach you in school, right, is how to actually manage money. Like, I feel like Chinese people always just like save money, like, but then nobody teaches you what to do with your money. And I think it's insane that it's like I would say it's like one of the most important things in life, and no one teaches you that. I find that so weird. Why is there not a single class that tells you what to do with money?
Yeah. I mean,
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest problem with the education right now. Money.
Yeah.
They
but
just
for
never
like
teach you.
American liberal
Yeah.
arts art education, the reason why
Yeah.
liberal arts education doesn't have majors such as accounting or
Yeah.
risk management, or these like
Yeah.
these courses that you would find in like a state university, is because liberal arts education, like the whole idea about liberal arts education is they don't want to train you to fit into one specific mold. That's what they say, right? That like that's the thing that they kind of ingrained in our minds when we went to college. It's like we don't want you to fit in any molds. What we want is to teach you a way of thinking so that afterwards you can do whatever you want. So there's no quote unquote like useful majors. They're kind of all up in the air, and you learn a lot about a lot of things, and then you come out of it like the whole point of money management. Yeah, you're right. It's like one of the most important things in life, but and you would think that in a society they would at least try to teach it to you, but in the education system it's so up in the air that, or maybe it's just hard to, like, how would you teach that? I don't know,
No,
but
you
there isn't even a
okay.
way. Yeah.
No, that's like I would even start teaching this in middle school and high school. If you look at people, like say you win the lottery, right? And people who suddenly receive a sum of money. So lottery, women who get a divorce and then suddenly they get a lot of money, or someone passes away and you inherit money. It's like more than 50% of people just lose all that money in the first year because they have no clue what they're doing, right? So then there's two types of people who spend, people who will start to give that money away to, because suddenly when you have money, all these people come to you, family, friends, and everything, give that money away. But you literally have to teach people stuff like, what is a bank account? What is a current account versus a savings account? How does $1 turn into $5? Like explain things like to a kid. There's this Reddit forum that's like, explain like I'm 5. I always think all this complicated stuff in the world, it needs to be explained in a way like you're talking to a 5-year-old. Instead of now, when say people at like 25, they've worked 5 to 7 years of their life, and then they've accumulated a sum of money in the bank account, and then they're thinking, okay, I have very limited time every day. I come home late from work. The last thing they want to do is think about, how do I manage this money? How do I divide this money up? So they just watch TV, and then it just, when you're 25, suddenly you're 35. And then at 35, you wasted a good 10 years of your life. You could have invested, you could have like grew the money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think when we have a kid, like give the kid a bank account really early and encourage the kid to learn about managing your own money, because I didn't have my like own bank account until college, right? And I had to like first year I had to learn about all this necessary information that would have helped me saved a lot of time if I had started earlier. And even when I was working in junior high and high school, like I would get checks, but then my mom would help me deposit it, and it's not like I need the money. So being exposed to that information early on definitely will be beneficial and advantageous. Yeah.
But I also think like money habits, right? They're formed by what you see from your parents. So like, oh, go ahead, James.
Yeah.
May I just go to bathroom real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Of course. Of course. Don't worry, we'll cut this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn from your parents. You learn from like patterns.
Yeah. So if they have like an unhealthy relationship with money, like they can make comments like, oh, this thing is so expensive, right? You actually pick this stuff up. So like I had my first bank account super young. I was 8. They have these bank accounts in Singapore for kids. Like even the bank book is like filled with cartoons and stuff, but it never taught me anything because it's still, like you said, your mom does it for you. She gets a red package, she deposits it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you never actually learn anything.
Yeah.
Dan, what happened?
I don't know.
Bad connection. Oh.
Yeah, happened yesterday. I'm on a LAN.
Oh, you are? That's
so I'm not even on a
strange.
Wi-Fi. So I think maybe the line is just cut, and then.
Oh.
Where do we get up to anyway? Where do I take it up from?
Hold on.
I guess you can start from like when I ended my commentary.
I heard about your commentary about the education system and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I know what to say. Okay, I'll say something. What I'm going to say is going back to what Long Long said about maybe how'd you get out of it, blah blah blah. This kind of,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to move on. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is a very different episode, right?
I like it though. It's
Yeah,
like you don't hear
me
about
too.
this.
The thing is, I have to like as
It's okay.
much
We'll be positive when we're talking
with
about watches.
James is like because James speaks in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
I think I needed to resonate with me, otherwise, because he speaks in a very few lines kind of guy.
Mm.
Yeah. But fuck, man,
The
it wasn't
the
easy.
most
Fuck me
depressing
just talking
episode
about
though.
it.
Yeah.
The most depressing episode is still Chester though. Like that was really dark. Like when you listen to it, just like drains you, and you're like,
No, I still remember in Chester's
Yeah.
episode, there's like a
yeah,
moment when he says, sometimes you just look up in the sky and you wonder like how small we are, and yet everyone's
So-
like,
So you
trying
know,
to-
like, yeah, talking about Chester, you know, when I said you can see it in people's eyes, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
see. I see it in James's eyes. I see it in Kelvin's eyes. I don't see the
you
same
don't see
thing.
in Chester. Yeah,
I don't see the same thing in Chester's eyes.
I
Yeah,
know
it's a
what you
different
mean.
thing. It's a
See
different
what?
thing.
Yeah.
like see the pain.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Chester's one is like the second type of person you described, which is like there's like there's like gloss over the eyes,
Yeah,
and you
little
kind of
bit.
just go through life, but you're sad, but you don't really want to know why, but you're just like, oh, okay.
Because I'll tell you why. Because
Yeah.
his pain, is
Yeah.
different from where ours has been experiential in our career and it's impacted. So it's that kind of that kind of experience, right? Chester pain
Mhm.
comes from childhood, right?
Mm.
So that's why you see it differently.
Do you see
Mm,
pain in my eyes?
No.
No.
Why?
She's like, let me.
Why?
But
It's
like,
not just not just through your eyes, yeah. It's your whole demeanor. Yeah. Why this is why there's a difference between like young people bring a lot to the team. You know, even like you bring a lot to the waiting list podcast team, right? Because you have a naivety, not have a that bit where you haven't been, but it's also really essential energy to make us. It's why a lot of companies have young people, because they bring something. It's not just that youthful energy where you can work them to the bone, more than that, right? But then you've got the wise heads with a bit of experience,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then it's kind of like similar to the relationship I have with you, right? Because you see me as like a bit of a mentor kind of person, right?
Yeah.
That can guide you, right? Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
Right. Let me think. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I was thinking what Long Long said actually just now, which was, how would you get out? And yeah, the friends. If I had a mentor, like myself at that time, and it's got to be a person that has gone through it, by the way. Otherwise, it's not even convincing. And they tell me there and not hold my hand, but was there for me to talk to. Because again, I feel sometimes talking to family isn't the easiest thing ever, right? Especially when you've been raised for no reason to fail. It's like, I got a little problem here. Like, no, that's not a problem. Yeah, did you know my life back in the day? It was worse than yours. That's what you're going to hear, right? So maybe that would make a difference. But let's bring this back to James, because we got to the part where you were 2.5 years, looking after your grandma. And was that a period of time where you built yourself back up? Was a soul searching time for you to really move on? Or what was the kind of period of time was that?
Well, I didn't just take care of her, because back at her house, I was also doing some stock and futures trading on my own. So I wasn't really completely out of job. I'm just doing stuff on my own. So it was okay. And it was kind of fun being with my grandma, just because I never had, I was raised up by her until 2 years old. And I didn't after that, I didn't spend a considerable amount of time with her, living together or whatnot. So I think it's fun, and we have to speak in Taiwanese. Back then, I was not very good at Taiwanese. I always speak Mandarin. So, that's one way to pick up my Taiwanese again. That was cool. So.
Right. So after that, from our discussion, you actually changed. You went through a few things, right? You went back into like the wine industry, which was kind of like you fleetingly went into before your 2.5 years. And you also got certificates in other things like dancing and scuba diving. So very, very different to what you had done before, right?
Yep.
So
I'm naturally very curious person. So I love to learn a lot of different things and be somewhat good at it, so that's what I've been doing, Still dancing to this day.
Yeah, and you also set up a salsa studio, right? And you had that was like, maybe was that your first project for yourself, like a salsa studio with cooking, right? That concept or something like that.
Oh, this is like we're trying to offer different entertainment for our clients, salsa dancing and scuba diving and cooking lessons, different things. I had a partner who's a pretty good cook, and but ultimately that concept did not take off because the crossover rate was not as high as we think. We just think that maybe people come for one thing, they would go for another, but in truth, not really. So that concept did not take off, but we still have fun. We did not lose money.
Yeah. So that didn't work, and I'd love to talk about like how in the end of this story you did make it, but that isn't how quite this story is going to end, unfortunately. So everything you've done, you've had setbacks along the way. And we're not talking about one or two. We are talking about repeated setbacks. Have you ever thought, we're not going to go through like how did you get through it, but had you ever thought like, was there something wrong you've done on those ventures? Such as the
constantly.
wine. Yeah. So
constantly.
What would you have done differently on certain things, apart from the advice you gave earlier, which was if you see a problem, cut it off and find a way out quickly. So move quickly. What other, looking back, what would you have done differently?
That's a very philosophical question. And recently I just, I was researching whether or not people have free will, whether or not people are, everything is determined or you have free will. And if I dial back time, would I do anything differently? Or would the outcomes different? And as a pessimistic person, I don't think the outcome would be any different. I think everything is determined. So, but as a person, I just trying to enjoy all the everything along the way. I wouldn't say right now. I don't see things as successful or failure. I just enjoy what you have and enjoy all your experience. I think that would be a much better way to look at it. Because if I believe everything is determined, there's no way to fight it anyway, right? So just enjoy it.
Can I just ask you, are you religious or superstitious? Because Taiwanese people are just very, very superstitious.
It's funny. Back in college, I got into Christianity. I went to churches with my friends. I actually even sang in a choir. It's a gospel choir. It's a black choir. 90% of people are black. It's funny. And I sang that choir for a year and a half. And but I don't call myself a Christian because I never got baptized, and right now I don't go to churches, but I do believe in God. of some sort.
Mhm.
Maybe not a Christian God, maybe not
Yeah.
an Islamic God, but
Mm.
I believe in God.
Okay. So, when you spent time in Taiwan, was your family like, okay, 我们去帮他算命, like let's find out why nothing's going smoothly and so on? Because this is something my family would do.
My mom did a couple times for
Yeah.
me, and
Yeah.
the fortune teller would say that I'll have my career really really late in my life.
Mm.
That's what he
Okay.
said. So far it's been like that. So okay,
Mhm.
maybe there's some truth in it.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
definitely happened with me at that time. My
Mm.
mum was doing all of that stuff. Like it went into overdrive. And and if we go back to what James said about if you feel like it's determined, what I think it is if you feel like it's not in your control, it's in someone else's control, you don't beat yourself up anymore because it wasn't in
Yeah.
your control. So you see it as like that. And then if you also factor in with there's just so many things, no matter how you critique it, when you go back, you couldn't have avoided it, you couldn't have predicted it. That also goes into that very nicely into that would have been fate, right?
Yeah.
Some things you just can't control. So it fits in nicely with that. You definitely at your deepest points, because you don't have anything to grasp onto, you grasp onto religion and spiritual stuff like God. Like I don't know what I believe in that. Yeah. Because sometimes when in my deepest moments, I do feel like I look up to the sky and say like, why are you doing this to me? You know?
Mm.
Well, it's
Trying
a
to
big mystery. I think eventually you understand, but maybe not right now, but eventually. And so I believe in God or believe in higher being just a backbone of your daily life. I wouldn't just go back to it every single time or every single day, but you have that in the back of your head. So okay, God's in control, so I don't have to worry about it.
Mm.
So is that kind of the advice you would give if you could give to your younger self back in when you first started out? So what advice is that similar to the advice you would give?
Yes, I would. Yeah, back then I did not understand this, but once I understand it become much easier because I just don't blame myself every single day anymore.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So we're actually going to end on our final question today, which is, James, what is your dream?
My dream?
Yeah, now.
Just be happy. just be happy, and just know all my friends and my family, they're healthy and live a relatively happy life. That's all I care about anymore. Not about money, not about material stuff. And because I've been through that, back then, back in the Goldman Sachs day, I was doing quite well. I bought my first house immediately, but material things will fade away. Even watches, I enjoy watches, but if one day I have to give up all my watches, I'll be fine with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, I don't know, it's been a bit of an emotional episode, I guess, for me and James, but
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to Calvin, because Calvin actually was a big reason why also I probably stood on my 2 feet. The guy was larger than life. He is larger than life, right? His demeanor, his confidence, was just someone I don't know if it's a role model or something, but he made such a deep impression in my life. And, that's one thing. But he introduced me to his circle of Shanghainese friends and everything. And that's when my life improved. So he shared resources. I've never spoken to him about this kind of stuff, by the way, but he must have known. And he made my life so much easier. in Shanghai. And I always remember, like, even now, he didn't have to do anything. He didn't have anything to gain from it, right? I had nothing. I had no resources, anything. So, you know, it's really thank you to him. But
I really, I'm very thankful for Shanghaiwatchgang too, because, you know, it was, first of all, it's fun. And second of all, you know, if I don't know these guys, I've never seen all the amazing watches I saw for the past 3 years, 4 years. So I'm really thankful for that. And, you know, just in general, people in the group are pretty fun. And right now, I'm helping Daniel and Calvin organize the GTG maybe once or twice a month or something like that. But, you know, it's been fun and it's working out pretty well.
Yeah. So in case, you know, it hadn't come through or it didn't come through, I think, James, that despite all your setbacks, I've got immense respect for your mental strength.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. In the episodes, you know, in this podcast, maybe, you know, I don't know. Definitely in previous podcasts, I come across as a clown, I guess. But, you know, I guess this side of me that people don't see, you know, I've shared it with you, and maybe some of the girls here, they don't really see it that often either. And, you know, yeah. I think that's
internet, you know, I mean, like people want to show their best stuff on the internet. You know, they really hide their, you know, the other side. So, and
well, in light of that, in light of what you say, if people can show their vulnerability, it's one of the courageous things they can do, right? There is positivity in showing vulnerability because it can bring two people closer, because everybody's vulnerable. Everybody has that side to them, right? But we only share it to the people that we want to share it with, and potentially go closer. So anybody that has the courage, despite looking like amazing, I tell you, the more amazing you look, it's probably harder, right? To come up with that vulnerability. You have to give huge respect for that, because I know how that felt. I know what courage that took to admit that there was something not quite right in my life. So I think it's an important lesson to learn not to judge people by the cover or even by the first few meets. And no matter how bad you may think you have it, you aren't alone. Those things which we discussed, such as self-doubt, suffering, that at the time, you know, we think seem only happen to us. Actually, it's more common than we think. And life isn't perfect. The choices we make aren't either. But we make the best we do in real time. And sometimes we can get in a hole and we feel like we just can't get back out. I felt like that. And I think that's come across in this podcast. And I want people listening to also recognize what we just said, which was, in a world where everybody seems to be living a perfect life, I don't want to say that there's always someone worse, but, you know, it's okay to feel bad. You will get through it, hopefully. And the people around you, they care a lot. They care a lot about you, much more than you could think or ever imagine. So I want to thank you, James, for sharing that story. I was touched the first time I heard it. And to be honest, I'm a bit drained already. Right. But it really touched me. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So to all the listeners, hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Catch you later. Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to the Waiting List podcast. Hit the subscribe button and the next episode will come straight to your phone as soon as it's ready. Whilst I'm here, please remember to leave a nice review and follow us on Instagram at the Waiting List podcast.